Welcome to My Best Campaign. I'm Amanda Lee Smith. We're quite likely stepping into a recession, and the middle of a downturn is probably the hardest time to acquire new customers. These are the moments when customer loyalty is a vital lever, and I'm always surprised by how poorly brands tap into their existing base of superfans. There are some notable exceptions, though. Take Nike. Even with some recent struggles, there's no question that Nike has true diehards, people who wouldn't be caught in another sneaker, who will line up for 24 hours to get a new drop. Membership programs are the best way to formalize that loyalty, to plug in a system of rewards, to connect fans to events, and of course, to get super valuable customer data. Today I'm talking to Katie Dreke, who played a huge role in getting Nike's membership program to where it is today, evolving it from a standalone training app to an omni-channel membership program totally rooted in e-commerce. This one is a real deep dive into what makes membership programs work, how to use them to drive actual revenue, and ways to use loyalty to create an invaluable feedback loop with your customers. And Katie is just a wealth of stories. She's had a super interesting journey. She spent years working agency side, supporting the tech industry in Seattle. She worked at a few shops, including a stint at IDEO, but the one that stuck with her was a small independent agency in Seattle called the Wexley School for Girls, where she got to be in the center of a sort of heyday for brand marketers.
It was mostly kind of like very non-traditional. At the time, the word guerrilla marketing was being thrown around. That was sort of the phrase of the day, but it's basically just like really non-traditional connectivity with consumers in really interesting ways. And it was the most fun. It was so fun. We had a fight song. I remember I was like the fifth employee. So as we grew, I was kind of the den mother in some respects, like going to IKEA and buying a shit ton of furniture and then staying up over the weekend and putting it all together so that everybody can come in on Monday and be excited. And then on I think it was the 5th anniversary, maybe it was 7. I can't remember the specific year, but I hired the marching band from the local high school in my neighborhood in Ballard, Seattle. So Ballard High School marching band was hired by us to play our fight song and march down 5th Avenue under the monorail in downtown Seattle. We had a t-shirt gun filled with our Wexy t-shirts, and our staff didn't know we were doing this. We had an all-day sort of like on-site, off-site where we were talking about growth and plans. And then we said, everybody come out to the sidewalk for a surprise. And then here comes the marching band. And we followed them down the street. I mean, we didn't ask the city for permission or anything. We went about 3 blocks and we shot the t-shirt gun off, and like we're shooting t-shirts at tourists essentially. Like it was just so belligerent and so much fun all the time. Again, that was also a precedent center for like, what does culture look like when you really think about it and you really care about it?
Katie brought this deep understanding of what a thriving culture should look like with her to Amsterdam and a role at Weiden Kennedy, where she led strategy for Honda, Coca-Cola, and of course, Nike. And she finally went brand side while she was still in the Netherlands, actually spending 2 years at Adidas. Agency life pulled her back and overseas again to Sydney, where she helped open a new Droga 5 office with a bunch of former Weiden folks. In retrospect, it was a pretty auspicious first decade of her career.
I also feel like when you're in it, you don't always recognize how unique the people are that you happen to be. Like I look back now on several crews that I ran with in Amsterdam, like on certain accounts. And I just have like so much nostalgia for them, or like a particular assignment where we just grinding together in the trenches. And it feels awful at the time. You don't realize what you're doing is forging like a really powerful emotional memory. And also like lifelong compadres that you can call on. Even just this year, I was part of a really dynamic project that came together kind of quickly in Sweden for one of my clients for H&M. And they had pulled in a bevy of creatives that they knew, and they tapped me to bring in some creatives that I knew so we could have like this week-long workshop. And I got into the room on day one, and boom, there's a guy that I used to work with at Droga 5 in Sydney who I haven't seen since I left in 2014, and it is now 2024. So I haven't
In
seen him
Sweden.
in Sweden. Yeah, it turns out he lives in Norway, and it was just like no time had passed at all.
Today, Katie runs her own strategic consultancy, Dreke, drawing on all those experiences working across industries and building relationships in such disparate corners of the world. Actually spelled DRKE. It's not just a shortened form of her last name. If you visit her website, drke.co, you'll see those 4 letters can stand for a lot of things, but the one she leans into is deep record knowledge exchange, the exchange of ideas rooted in decades of experience.
You asked me what it is that I do, and I'll just take one step back to tell a tiny story, which is in the beginning, I wasn't, I called a lot of people to get advice, as you do when you start something new. I, like a strategist on anything, I spent the first couple bit of time doing my research, and I got some advice about, hey, pick a lane and choose your thing and make sure people know how to hire you for your thing and how much you cost and stuff like this. And it started to make me feel like, oh my God, I'm not a deli counter. Like, it's not like it's a turkey sandwich or it's a, tomato soup and it's $5.99. Like, I just started to feel like really caged in by that concept. And it started to make me think, is this actually what really good consultancies do? Because if so, maybe this really isn't my jam. Like, I just really can't imagine operating this way. I just really fight against this. And so I decided, follow your instincts. You do you, get out there and do the work the way that you feel good about it. See if people want that, see if you can build a business off of that. Make it as like frictionless as possible for you to just operate naturally and in your wheelhouse. And it turns out that was actually the most important, like, bad advice I got, because in rejecting it and choosing to just follow my instincts, I have found a way of working that is making me not only like really, really satisfied, but I've had multiple clients just be like, I don't know how you know how to do all of this stuff. Like, I couldn't do what you do. And I was like, what do you mean? You mean like the invoicing part, or do you mean like the negotiation part? Because those are the things that are sometimes hard for me. And I was like, oh yeah, they're hard for me too. And they're like, no, like, how do you know how to do all these things? And it's like, oh, well, it's because I'm a Mockingjay. Like, I have to like run around, and I've just been like obsessively collecting all of these different sort of expertise. And now I get to put them into play. And so when I get a brief from, I don't know, a client in fintech or in beverage, I can reflect on my experience from airlines and loyalty programs or whatever. And having worked in different parts of the world and all these different sort of like feedback loops of experience. Now what I thought was maybe going to be my Achilles heel, that I didn't want to do like the consulting way. It's now my sort of secret sauce. A lot of it is kind of the sensation of bringing the pixelated into focus. And sometimes my clients will call and say, I'm not even really sure what we need, and so I do a lot of phase 0 type stuff, or just like conversational advising kind of things. Sometimes a project falls out, sometimes not. Sometimes a project falls out and it's not for me, it's for someone else who has a different skill set. But so there's a bit of orienteering that goes on with a lot of the client stuff. There's also a lot of like lateral visioning and projecting. So getting people to think beyond the current quarter, the current year, even thinking beyond the current leadership team. Like, what do we want to build to hand off to the next leadership team? Like, trying to take individuals out of the conversation as much as we can, individual personalities, strip the people away, really focus on the work, the meaning of the work, the value of the work, and how it gets transitioned and transmitted into the future.
That idea of bringing the pixelated into focus is a good parallel to how Nike's membership program actually came about. It took a lot of testing and iteration, an understanding of regional consumer mindset, and a trial in a smaller market before taking on the behemoth of global membership.
So Nike it didn't start off as a retailer. it's always been an innovator and a designer of footwear and apparel, and then it would work with manufacturers to create product, and then it would work with wholesale partners to sell through the product and to distribute the product. And even though there was Nike Towns for quite a while, like it took a while for Nike to make a decision that it actually wanted to excel at retail as well. And so Nike membership didn't start as a loyalty program like it might in another place. Like if you think of the Nordy Club at Nordstrom, or you think of whatever, name your retailer that you walk into, a big box store of any kind, or Starbucks. It's because they're a retailer that they choose to begin a loyalty program to create a feedback loop with customers and to incentivize people to stay customers for longer and to go deeper into their wallet. And it's a retail lever you can pull, and it's really old school, and it's been around forever and it's not a radical concept. So, but for Nike, that kind of found its way into retail later in its sort of growth curve, and decided, as we all know, in its more recent history, decided to double down in DTC and really make a serious commitment to retail, and having a huge organization internally that drove the owned and operated sort of tsunami that goes to customer, goes to the direct to consumer. Membership then found its moment in that doubling down on DTC. Prior to that, it sat in brand, and it was kind of a brand expression tool. And it was called Nike Plus. It had this Volt green color. It had kind of a tone of voice that was more connected to the app environment. It wasn't very well connected to commerce at all. And there was a lot of decisions to actually keep it away from commerce. Every once in a while, we would try to like get little messages in the app about making people aware of, like, if you're a training person and the new Metcon's coming out, wouldn't it be great? Shouldn't we be telling the people using the training app that there's a new training shoe? And there was always like very lively debates about the appropriateness or inappropriateness of like messages, and not wanting to get in the way of people using the apps for what we wanted them to do, which is to do sport. So I was first introduced to all of this stuff when I joined in 2014. Really quickly glommed onto it because it has this tech background, and I just love all this tech stuff, and tech expressions of brands was something that I'd been working on for a long time. And I kind of was loosely connected to the work as it was evolving because I was in the brand innovation team. It took me going through several other roles before there was a role available in Nike Japan for a head of membership to take the membership program as it existed in North America, which was probably, kind of in its infancy, just starting to get its sea legs, and pull it into its first international market in time for the 2020 Olympic Games. So I had like a 2-year runway to kind of get it up and running, 3-year runway. And Tokyo is also a key city for Nike. So it was one of those cities where it gets a little extra love, a little extra shine. And luckily, it was also one of the international cities that was on platform, meaning it was going to be a lot more easy on the back end to synchronize a member's experience through a bunch of different nodes in the network. Whereas some of the other international offices were on different platforms just based on tech debt, or whether it was based on just realities in market, which made some of that stuff harder to do. So it was a great time. And that's when I officially was like brought on to like drive the membership agenda in Japan, which was fascinating because Japan, as we all know, is a highly elevated sense of service. And membership, as we wished it to be at Nike, was to be where service design could take place and service propositions could come to life, and maybe even some channels of revenue if we really got good at this and started getting our engine firing on all cylinders. So walking into Tokyo was like, oh man, the first thing I need to do is understand this landscape, the Japanese consumer, their expectations around service. Where is that bar? And I engaged in this really awesome body of work with Flamingo, actually locally in town. And I'm still connected to the woman who did the research because she's just fabulous. And we looked at all of these different examples and really found that if service in Japan is not something that you pay for, they think there's something wrong. They think it's not good. Whereas here in the United States, we're so accustomed to our digital experiences being freemium to start, getting you excited, getting you hooked. And then usually what then blooms is like several different tiers where you can stay where you are in the freemium version, or you can sweeten the deal through a subscription. And then you start getting subscribers and members, and a business model starts to fly under there. So going into Tokyo and learning this, I was like, we have to actually charge for some of this. And Global was like, no way. Like, we're not doing this. And so I was able to develop with my tiny little team some really great prototypes of what service could look like in a temporary sense. So I got permission to run pilot programs. And so I did one for runners, in which if you're a member, you could sign up to do a one-on-one training experience at our running door in Daikanyama. And a trainer would meet you. You'd go on a 45-minute run together. And at the end of that experience, you'd get a training program, bespoke, built to you. It'd be sent to you in the app. But also, we added a little sales twist at the end, which was, if you are interested in buying something off the footwear wall today, or something, off the hanger, we'll just waive the fee, because it was a 30,000 yen fee, about $30, to have this experience. But if they were going to buy $100 pair of shoes, we'd go ahead and waive that fee, and they could just get what they wanted, because hopefully they were excited about the future of their training now.
It's like the wine tasting model, your tasting fee is waived if you buy the case of wine.
Yeah, go for it. And we were able then to, because we made this available to members only, we were then able to follow them through the app environment and onto the .com platform environment. And then when senior leadership was coming through for one of their tours, we took them to Daikanyama, we showed them the experience, we explained what had been happening. And then most importantly, the data shows that you see 2x and 3x increase in browsing and buying on Nike.com when they have a physical experience with us as a member. You can see the change in the before and after behavior. And that's when the lights came on. And then we got a little bit more money to do a few more we did a similar pilot program for training. And then I got carte blanche to then go and work with the GM of the e-commerce engine in Tokyo to say, okay, how can membership enhance your bottom line here? Like, what is not selling right now? Show me the dogs. And so she gave me this Excel spreadsheet of 40 products that were really slow. We couldn't figure out why they weren't selling. Something in the trend cycle wasn't hitting. And I'm like, and then I went to my marketing team and I was like, okay, let's put together a sequence of 3 emails that are going to go out to members. It has to be a bundle. Let's create a bundling of, let's call it the black and white collection, and let's pull the black and white versions of all of these things that are stuck in the system, and let's see if we can push them. And then we pushed them either through just no discount, or we tried it with some discounts to see what would happen. And we were able to drive some business. And then the GM was like, oh, okay, this is interesting. I didn't expect that to happen. So then I got some confidence from that end. And then the other thing that we did is, sounds dumb to say this, but of course, when you become a member, you tell Nike what your birthday is. And we were calling, membership is like joining the Nike family, all this kind of stuff. And it's like, what kind of family member doesn't tell you happy birthday on your birthday? We don't do anything with the birthday. So in Japan, we had 9 months left in the fiscal. And I through arm twisting, I was able to get them to agree to offer, and we were playing around with it. Is it 10? Is it 15? Or is it a 20% discount on the month of your birthday? And so, long story short, it drove an additional $2 to $3 million worth of revenue that they wouldn't have seen otherwise, which was pretty big for the size of business that Japan is. All because we said happy birthday. And we also noticed things like when you say happy birthday and you give somebody a discount, they don't buy socks with that discount. They reach up. People were buying the leather jacket. They were buying the brand new expensive pair of running shoes or something like that. And it became an incredible little case study that I was then able to push back to the North America team and say, we figured out an automated way of doing this. Here's the playbook. Now go and detonate this across the way bigger market of North America. So that was my foyer into membership, was like running it, like getting my hands in the meat of it, communicating it, and also a little bit of internal inside of Nike reframing of it. As everyone, when you say membership at Nike, people were like, ugh, it's so dirty. It's coupons. It's like discounts. We don't do discounts. We're Nike. We're a premium brand. Like nobody in brand really wanted to talk about this concept because they thought of it in a very one-dimensional sort of way. And so a lot of the work that I was doing was internally being like, Nike would never do that. So why do you think that's what this is? And they'd kind of be like, what do you mean? And I was like, we're building actually a different kind of program for this brand that is worthy of the swoosh on it, and build with me. And so you kind of got people's ideas of like, oh, well then could it do this, could it do that? Yeah, every reason it could. So then I moved back to Portland and was recruited by the global membership team to come over and do a really specific job, which was to rebrand the program. And I think that these two roles in synchronicity or in tandem just gave me like this crazy purview, because at this time was when the DTC double down was going on. And so membership had moved out of brand and it went right into the red hot center of the Nike Direct organization, where it belonged. It's the engine for a direct, experience. And so it was dual efforts of internal advocacy, internal education, internal arm wrestling, internal problem solving, and then also rebranding the program to show up in the real world to the consumer in a way that it feels worthy of the Nike orange and swoosh and the legacy, but also takes Nike somewhere that it hasn't been able to go before. And the most important thing is that it needed to be consistent, and it needed to be hyper present, ubiquitously present in all of the online and analog experiences you would have with Nike, including product. So you can imagine some of the challenges there. We would find our mixed bag group of people, that we had a leadership team and a leader, and we had different people that were sitting across different parts that needed to grow. Someone was really obsessing what the benefits are today and what they should be tomorrow. Somebody was really obsessing what the partnerships are that we could do in collaboration with, say, a Foot Locker, or even with an airline, or should we even do something with what about Spotify? What are the things that are connected to sport, like music? Who should we tie up with, and what should those tie-ups look like? And then how could some of the value flow back and forth between our two organizations? And more importantly, what does the member get? So there's somebody looking at that. My job and my little tight team of ninjas, we were focused on what is it called? What does it look like? What does it feel like? What is the vibe? How does it show up everywhere in a way that is ambitious and beautiful and contextually correct, while also like being really clear and driving the business, creating retention, recruiting new members, making those members more highly engaged than ever before, and having them stick around longer than they've ever stuck around before. And it was fascinating. And one of the growth periods that I had at Nike too, because I would find myself in a room, like several times a year, there's like these major strategic milestones across the entire organization. And because of the importance being shown to Nike Direct at the time, membership was the topic that everyone wanted to hear about. And so I would find myself convening these conference rooms, and I'd have like the head of retail brand. So the guy who's responsible for all of the different retail types of footprints and the different visual centers and requirements that are created for the brand to flow into like a big one or a small one or in a major market or whatever. And then I would have the head of e-commerce design. So the person who's responsible for the in-app shopping experience and the Nike.com online shopping experience, and how does it feel Nike and how does it work? And then I had product merchandising partners who are merchandising in store and then also in the digital environments. And I had a graphics, like logo design, copywriting. So I had this mixed bag of people around the table and who wanted to talk about membership. And inevitably, the retail and digital people didn't naturally, due to their history at the company, think they had skin in the game here. They thought the brief was going to the graphic designer from brand design, who's going to make something pretty and then chuck the assets over to the stores team and to the digital team, and they'd, crop it and place it. This was kind of like the old way of thinking about membership, is just like little tiles of messaging. But my brief to them was like, membership is the sweetener for any customer. When they become a member, everything needs to sweeten up, like everything needs to level up. And we've been given, really specific direction that our members need to feel like they have a home in our retail environments, whether it's a physical or a digital space. So we need a member home in the retail environment. I need your help figuring out what that's going to look like. What is that interaction going to look like? What is that? How do you find out about it when you walk in the store? Is there a footprint? How many square footage do we need to have a member specific experience? And how are we going to do that in the app? Where's the member home inside of the app? So that as a member, I open the app, I can go home and my whole member experience, history and future is captured in a UI in which I can understand what's happening and what could happen. And that needs to also be prevalent on .com. And then you, merchandising person, we need to start making some member product based on the member data we have. We have over 190 million members in this program who are shedding data off of them constantly as they're making their way through our ecosystem. And some of that data is product related. In fact, a lot of it is. And we want to make sure that we know from our own research that people come to become members because they want closer connectivity to the athletes and to the products that surround this brand. So let's start talking about member only product. Let's start talking about a member wall on the footwear wall, whether it's a physical footwear wall or it's a digital footwear wall. Like we just started exploring all these things. And suddenly people are like, oh, I have a different job to do here than I thought I did. And it became very much the member experience almost becoming like the nervous system of the brand. And the touch points we needed all of these touch points to resonate at a higher frequency than to an anonymous customer who was going to walk in off the street, buy a pair of shoes and walk away and never see them again. If the member's walking in and we know who they are and they know who we are and we know that there's something going on, there should be a way for everything to be really vibrating. So that began a cascading, just like ongoing adventure on like, how can we plus up all these different nodes in the system? Mm-hmm. And then the trickiest nut to crack of all, and I'll try to sum this one up quickly, was just that it had been called Nike Plus for a really long time. And through all of our research, we discovered people didn't want to join Nike Plus. They didn't want to join a thing off to the side. They wanted to join Nike. Like they were there to participate and to have a closer bond with this thing that they remember from their childhood, or maybe they're parents now and they're introducing to their own kids. There's all this emotional baggage, that wonderful baggage that comes along with the world of sport. And they were imbuing all of this weight and all of this robustness, not behind Nike Plus, but behind the Nike brand. So it needed to be rebranded, but it was a political quagmire. There was some senior folks that disagreed. We needed to really show what we were gaining by doing this. We needed to show out in the marketplace how the word plus had become a very overused moniker and symbol, and it was starting to become debased, and it was time for us to walk away from it. We had to get really real with a lot of things that I think some people struggled to hear, but it was 18 months, another really incredible learning experience. And it was also a little bit like ninja work, because who was the messenger for some of these messages determined how successful it was going to be and how it was going to come to life. And the Nike brand is very revered. It's very protected. And to suggest that the swoosh was going to go on the membership program to some was a really crazy idea, kind of radical. But once you start getting them into the idea of like, these are actually the people, our members, who are no longer customers, but they're not quite employees. They're actually kind of in the middle. And it can't just sit on the outside, and it can't be undervalued. And when you look at the money, we also had several slides that were showing like the financial engine within these people. This is the future of the business. And so if we don't take care of it, then we don't get to keep it, and if we want it, then let's tend that garden, and let's give it all the love it deserves. And my team was amazing. Maureen and Mason, especially, just lots of grind and doing some sneaky things too. Like, the Olympics were coming. There was a lot of really beautiful work being done by the communications teams with all, key athletes getting ready for Tokyo. We didn't know COVID was coming yet. And so there was all of this anticipation and really just a tsunami of work being created. And we heard through the grapevine that Megan Rapinoe was going to be in LA doing a voiceover with Weiden Kennedy for the anthem spot of the Olympics. And without asking permission, I sent a couple members of my team and an agency partner to LA to be at that shoot, to capture on an iPhone Megan Rapinoe saying, "Welcome to Nike membership. Welcome to the family." Because we wanted that little asset that shot on an iPhone that we could then put into a comp internally to say, this is what we want the level of the welcome email to be. One of our most elite athletes, known globally around the world, iconic woman for so many reasons. She should be the one welcoming you into the future of your membership in this brand. And we didn't ask permission. We didn't say sorry. We just went and got it. It was Mason's idea, and I give him all the credit. And he did the work. He was there holding the phone. So it worked. It was really hard. And I learned so many things about large organizations, kind of recalibrating people's mental models around what the work could be and should be and needed to be. And just also strategic patience. These things don't happen overnight. Even when the business is driving you to make it happen overnight, which is the tension in the work, you're trying to make it happen overnight, but people's minds don't change overnight. My colleagues are not going to just snap into action because I've asked them really nicely and I've given them beautiful tools to work with. It's going to take time for their heads to come around. And so if you push harder, you actually make it worse. And so there's that, you have to kind of walk that really hot line of, I'm doing everything I can, but I'm also having some restraint and some strategic patience behind the work.
What I'm hearing is you went from having basically what was just a training app to this omni-channel membership that really, is driven by e-commerce from the sound of it and direct-to-consumer sales, but reached every single touch point of the brand, which is amazing. So if you're using that as the model, what do you think are the essential ingredients of a really good membership program?
You have to play small ball and big ball at the same time. And meaning members join because there's something they want. I mean, we could even see in our data at Nike that most of the people were joining through Nike.com because they wanted the free shipping. So you need to have something immediate, a sweet at the end of the line, something real, something tangible, something that matters. It can't all just be emotion and ethereal dreams, but it also needs to be emotion and ethereal dreams, because otherwise then you're just couponing people to death, and it becomes a potentially damaging element to the brand. So there's a really interesting sort of calibration between kind of that small ball and big ball, and that kind of that those trinkets, and then also like real meaning, and real deep emotion and robustness. It's sort of like the ethos, the why. We had an internal mantra around in sponsorship of the everyday athlete, which made a lot of sense to people if we wanted to say that language to the external consumer, because Nike sponsors elite athletes all around the world, the most iconic athletes in history. And the membership program was then meant to embody our sponsorship of the everyday athlete. And we had another turn of phrase that we used, which was, we don't ask for their loyalty, we show ours. And that was kind of like a way of taking action internally, which with every team to say, what can you do in your annual planning cycle, in your seasonal go-to-market plan, in your product launch plan? What can you do within this plan to show loyalty? Not expect it, but to show it to members. And so those things were really sort of like North Star elements. I think you also need to have an analog and a digital vision for what the experience should be. Once we got the design phase finished, we know what it's going to be called. We know what it's going to feel like. We've got like mood boards, and we've got a bunch of copy that tells us what the voice is starting to sound like. And, you know, it's got an identity, and it's the Nike identity, but it's just at a different volume level. If you think about like Just Do It, the top of the mountaintops, shouting in a megaphone, kind of thumping your chest, and it's, you know, Jordan and Kaepernick and Rapinoe, and it's, you know, Spike Lee, all this stuff that kind of sits up at the Just Do It level. And then as you come down off the sides of the mountain, maybe you find yourself in some of the category worlds of, you know, running or women's basketball. There's communications that happen in there that feel a bit more tribalistic or more category specific. We needed this voice to underpin all of that, and to be a voice that we never had before at Nike, which was kind of one of the most exciting elements of this work, is that we never had a 365 voice for Nike. We had a anthemic twice a year voice. We had a seasonal voice. Here's the newest shit from basketball, blah, 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 you know, or, hey, it's the Olympics again, or it's World Cup again. But we never had we're going to talk to you every day voice. We had social media, but like, that wasn't the Nike voice. It was, I don't know. It was usually really channel specific. It was doing one thing at TikTok and another thing on Twitter and another thing in Instagram. So when Nike is talking directly to you, the member, about you and your relationship to this brand, we needed a voice for that. And so once we had that, plus the visual iconography, then, and only then was I able to go and talk to the retail teams, physical and digital, the event teams, and also product teams, to say, this is the vibe that we're creating. This is the voice that is going to carry these messages. And you guys hold the keys to these spaces. And by the way, I need you to hold hands when you do this work. So retail brand and digital brand, I need you to actually do this work together, because guess what? The consumer is going to open their phone, open the app, walk into a retail environment in which it's been beaconed to recognize that you're in the store with your app open. And now the app is the remote control for a physical experience in this door. So we don't have the luxury of sitting in two different buildings across campus on this idea. We've got to come together. Well, we have to do shared work. And they were not accustomed to being asked to do shared work. And there was some resistance from some and some excitement from others. And I just focused on the people who were excited and just like threw all of my energy in that direction and just worked on making the most incredible comps and then real pieces of work.
Yeah.
Same.
You talked about voice quite a bit, from that kind of broadcast Nike voice to finding a 365-day-a-year voice. What are the distinctive characteristics of that every single day voice from a brand to a consumer?
Yeah. We didn't want to be preachy, there was a discussion around whether we should have like a coach-like voice, and we decided pretty quickly that we didn't want to be a coach. We wanted it to feel peer-like, but maybe like an older brother or sister, someone who's got a slight step ahead of you, has something to offer and is willing to offer it. Something very invitational. One of the mantras behind the direct revolution inside of the organization was around making sport a daily habit. And when you think about what that looks like in between friends, it looks like a conversation around sport, an invitation around sport, also that sort of like shame-free realization that sometimes life is complicated and busy and it gets in the way, and just constantly being there with you at the starting line of each new day, of each new moment, of each new trial, and inviting you into it.
Okay, some rapid fire questions for you.
Yeah.
Should membership programs be free or paid?
I mean, it honestly depends on the business. And it depends on, like, look at REI, for example. They have a paid membership, and almost, 90-something% of all of their revenue comes through members. Like a fraction of their business comes from a stranger walking into REI and buying a water bottle or a jacket on a rainy day. Like that business is run off of the back of membership.
Yeah.
And so it really does make sense to have someone pay one fee to become a lifetime member and to participate in everything the co-op offers, including advocacy opportunities on their platform and experiences and education and community, all that stuff.
What team should own membership programs?
Ooh. Again, it depends on what the members are being collected and brought together for. If it's a pure retail play, then it needs to be connected to the commercial entity. The danger is that it gets over-revved and overused and perhaps damaged by an overzealous commercial engine. You can hit it too many times and then people will leave. But if it's all about the commerce side of the company and it's not about anything else, it's not about a higher order ideal, it's not about making something happen in the world, then it should probably sit there because that's where it can do a really tangible financial job.
Yeah.
But more and more, I'm starting to think it's actually a really powerful brand asset. And if there's like a chief brand officer that has like a team that works under them, or if there is like a CMO who's responsible for the short-term and long-term viability of the brand, thinking about growth, but also thinking of brand development and the macro level narrative. Thinking of your members as participants in that experience, I think is really important. And also making sure that the member experience is paid off in the way that the anthemic brand communications will be teeing up the world to imagine that experience to be. And you don't want it to be, oh, I saw this beautiful ad and I cried and I went to the store and I bought the shoes and they're great. And then I joined the membership program and it's coupons.
Who do you think is doing it really well right now?
Oh, I've seen some starts of some interesting things. There's a brand, Houdini, in Sweden, that's started doing, not started, they've been on the circular agenda for a while and killing
they're
it.
Really driving sustainability in a big
really
way.
Driving it. And I wouldn't call it membership, but when you are a known customer, you can tap into subscribing to product in the winter. So you can temporarily, like you would do with Netflix. Oh, it's winter and we're not outside anymore. Let's subscribe to Netflix and watch some movies. Oh, it's summer. We're outside. We don't need any more. We'll turn it off.
Huh. Almost like a rental program?
So it's almost like winter wear. Like it's winter. I'm going to subscribe to Houdini and I'm going to get a puffy coat because I'm going to this outdoor festival and give it back. And then I'm going skiing. So I'm going to borrow, subscribe to these products for the winter season, scan them, and then it's summer and I give it back, turn off the subscription. They also have, you can buy used, you can get current stuff that you own repaired. They're starting to do resale as well. So that's an interesting model. And I would say On Running also has its Cyclone service where you subscribe to the pair of shoes. You never own them is the whole point.
Mm-hmm.
You never feel the burden of ownership, of consumer pressure, or, I wish I wasn't buying a new thing. I feel poorly about this. You never own the object. You subscribe to it, you run in it, you run it down, you send it back, a new one comes, you run some more. They're also breaking into apparel. And there's some tops now that you can introduce into that program. So that's to me a very functional, utilitarian relationship that is also very emotionally powerful. I wouldn't call it membership per se, but you do need to have a profile in order to engage in these things.
Yeah. We met at an online event for Early Majority, which was testing out this idea of using tokens as membership. I think they've moved away from that, as a lot of initiatives have moved away from tokens as a means of engagement with something. But there are brands that are really experimenting in different ways of doing membership and different revenue models than just selling product, which I appreciate.
Right. I appreciate it too. And to go back to Early Majority, I'm a member. I get invited to all hands meetings. I get to ask questions live in these meetings to the product designer. I get to see product months before it's available. I also get one of the best things, which is like an incredible discount on the product versus an anonymous consumer who buys it maybe at one of their stockist locations or who just goes to the website and doesn't log in. And I am a huge fan of their products. I've got 4 things.
Every time I see you, you're wearing Early Majority.
I'm guilty, very guilty. Go Joy Howard. Good job.
Awesome.
So yeah, that is a great example.
Amazing. Okay, let's talk high level. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions before we wrap up. You've been in the brand world for a long time. What's the best piece of brand advice you've ever received?
Starting agency side and then making my way into the brand side, I had some mental modeling that I needed to get my head right with on what it's like to work inside of a enterprise. And I was so used to thinking through the lens of project-based work. It's a project, it's a project, it's a project, it's a project. But when you are inside of an organization, particularly one that's been around for a while, the job is just never done. And I remember at first it kind of stressed me out. Oh my God, why can't you? It's almost like that line from Incredible, why can't you just stay saved? And I fixed it. Okay, now it's messy again. I got to fix it again. But once I made peace with that, I got some good advice about no, that's the point. It's never ending journey. It's always something new. It's fine. There's always something to do. It's great. There's always another, what's the problem with that? And I embraced it fully. And now I feel like it's my default position. I'm any client who calls me, I am walking into an environment in which this brand has been chucking along for 10 years or 80 years. And I am just the one who is currently with my hands in the mix. And my goal is to lift and shape and sharpen and, enhance and give it more legs to run. And who knows how long my hands will be in the mix, but when I let go of it and it moves forward without me, someone else is going to pick it up. And hopefully the work that I've done will enable them to continue to refine and sharpen. And thinking of it as a never ending story is kind of or a living organism.
There's no finish line for a brand.
No finish line.
Yeah, it's always evolving, and brands need to keep evolving. They're really a living thing, aren't they? Yeah.
That's right.
Awesome. Katie, where can people find you online?
Yeah, I don't spend any time on Twitter anymore. I refuse to call it anything other than Twitter. And I've recently just taken shop out of there, which is a bummer. because I used to really enjoy it. And I met so many amazing people there. So now I spend more time on LinkedIn, which is a strange thing for me to say out loud, but I do find some camaraderie there and some really good thinking happening there. I have a website, drke.co, but it's pretty lean intentionally. And I have an Instagram for my company, again, DRKECO. And that's mostly where I hang out these days.
Amazing. Well, Katie, thank you so much. I always learn a ton when we talk. Really appreciate your time.
Yeah, well, thank you for the invitation.
That was Katie Dreke, founder and lead strategist at Dreke. My Best Campaign is produced by Monday Creative and hosted by me, Amanda Lee Smith. Our sound engineer is Andro Bagaspes, and our theme music is by Stephen Cowley. A big update for those who would rather watch their podcasts, we're now on YouTube. Season 1 is now online, so you can watch our first 11 episodes, or you can listen to them as usual on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. A couple more things. If you know someone who is a VP of marketing, a CMO, or a founder with a great campaign story to tell, get in touch. My email is amanda@mondaycreative.co. And if you're listening along and want to hear more of these conversations, then by all means, follow us on your favorite podcast app, tell your marketing friends about us, and keep track of new episodes on Instagram at mondaycreative.co.